Unforgiven began as a screenplay titled The Cutthroat Killings, written in the 1970s by David Webb Peoples, the same screenwriter behind Blade Runner. Peoples crafted it as a stark, unromantic deconstruction of Western mythology. Rather than painting gunslingers as stoic heroes, his script revealed them as damaged, haunted men. Violence wasn't thrilling, it was ugly, irreversible, and morally murky. Initially, Peoples tried to get it made with various directors and actors, including Francis Ford Coppola, but it languished for over a decade. In the mid-1980s, the script landed in the hands of Clint Eastwood, who was immediately drawn to its moral complexity. But Eastwood, already an icon of the genre thanks to Sergio Leone's Dollars trilogy, made a key decision. He shelved the script for nearly a decade, waiting until he felt old enough to play the lead role of William Munny, a weary, widowed outlaw turned pig farmer trying to make peace with his violent past. Eastwood, now both director and star, began assembling what would become one of the most revered casts in Western cinema. His portrayal of Munny is the film's moral centre, an aging killer struggling to stay reformed, reluctantly drawn back into violence. The late great Gene Hackman initially turned down the role of the sadistic sheriff Little Bill Daggett, uncomfortable with the character's cruelty, but Eastwood persisted. He saw something vital in Hackman's ability to portray charm and menace simultaneously. Hackman ultimately agreed, and his performance became one of the most lauded of his career. He was known for being skeptical of violence in movies and was always hesitant to portray a violent man. Eastwood reassured him that Unforgiven would subvert violence rather than glorify it, and this moral lens helped Hackman embrace the role. Morgan Freeman plays Munny's old friend and former partner who joins him on a bounty mission to collect the money on killing two cowboys who recently mutilated a prostitute's face. That's how the movie begins, by the way. The very first scene.
Hold her, I'll cut her tits out!
His quiet dignity and tragic arc added emotional heft to the story. Eastwood cast Freeman personally, having worked with him on Lean On Me. Dumbledore plays a flamboyant, self-mythologizing British gunslinger. His scenes, especially his brutal takedown by Little Bill, serve as a scathing satire of heroic Western lore. The kid, a wannabe gunslinger, represents youth's romantic misunderstanding of violence. His breakdown after his first kill shatters the myth of the heroic outlaw.
Oh, we gonna see about that.
Filming began in the fall of 1991, mostly in Alberta, Canada, near Calgary. The bleak, windswept plains and muddy streets of the fictional town of Big Whiskey helped reinforce the film's grounded, somber tone. The town was constructed entirely from scratch and aged to appear lived in, rotting and real. There was no stylized glamour, only cold rain, creaking wood and moral rot. Jack N. Green, Eastwood's longtime cinematographer, shot the film with a muted colour palette. Scenes were often lit naturally, favouring dusk and overcast skies to create a somber atmosphere. As a director, Eastwood was famously efficient, rarely shooting multiple takes and keeping the crew calm and minimal. Hackman reportedly admired Eastwood's quiet command of the set, once saying that it was the most relaxed shoot he had ever worked on. At its core, Unforgiven is a film about the myth of redemptive violence. Every character who picks up a gun suffers, not from their wounds, but from their conscience. Little Bill, the so-called lawman, is revealed to be just as cruel and arbitrary as the outlaws he punishes. Munny, the reformed killer, tries to resist his nature, but ultimately succumbs to it when vengeance calls, culminating in a cold, terrifying final massacre that feels more tragic than triumphant. The film rejects the mythologizing of violence, as Munny says,
"It's a hell of a thing killing a man. You take away all he's got and all he's ever gonna have."
Unforgiven premiered on August 7th, 1992 to immediate critical acclaim. Audiences were struck by its slow-burning intensity and the way it flipped the Western on its head. It earned over $159 million worldwide, an enormous success on its $14 million budget. It was hailed as a landmark achievement and a fitting capstone to the Western genre, winning 4 Oscars for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor for Hackman, and Best Film Editing. Hackman's win was especially meaningful. His portrayal of Little Bill was chilling, layered, and unforgettable. It was his second win after The French Connection in 1971, and it confirmed his place among the finest actors of his generation. But Unforgiven wasn't just a western, it was an epitaph of the genre. It inspired a wave of revisionist westerns including Deadwood, the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, and even The Revenant. Clint Eastwood called it the film that he's most proud of, and many consider it his masterpiece. And to his credit, even as a miserable, grumpy old git, Clint Eastwood is still a badass.
You don't look like no rootin', tootin' son of a bitch and cold-blooded assassin.
He gets that a lot, actually. Just wait until he speaks. It is a great performance, though. There's a lot of sympathy for him over the loss of his wife. It takes a while for him to don his trademark cowboy gear, but it's always worth the wait. It's Clint Eastwood!
Well, I mean, why not shoot the president?
Please do. Gene Hackman was such a gem of an actor, and this won't be the last time we'll be talking about his talent in the next few months. It's such a tragic loss because the man had an amazing on-screen presence. He just had so much natural charisma in almost every role that he took on. There's a great scene where he gives a guy the chance to shoot him, and it's super intense, but Hackman remains calm and cool the entire time. It's great. In fact, he was so good that this wasn't even supposed to be in the movie. Yeah, this was actually a rehearsal, but Gene was so fantastic and so intense that Eastwood decided to keep this in and use this take instead. And it's not the only time that unexpected changes were left in the film. Considering it was shot in Canada, the country was going through an unusually dry spell at the time. But then at one point during a scene it began to unexpectedly snow, and this remained in. Furthermore, English Bob always speaks in an educated and posh upper class English accent. But in one scene the accent slips and he reveals his real one.
Well, he can go stuff himself as well, can't he?
Now this wasn't planned, but Eastwood decided to keep it in because it showed that the character was putting on a facade the whole time.
How many men you kill?
We're getting off the subject.
The performances are great and it does have a lot of decent action, but I'm not as loved up to this film as most. Admittedly, I'm not too knowledgeable when it comes to westerns, so it's probably just ignorance, but the performances alone make it worth seeing. Gene Hackman's performance as Little Bill is often cited as one of the greatest villains in cinematic history. Not because he was pure evil, but because he was human, insecure, and terrifyingly real. Though Gene Hackman retired from acting in 2004, Unforgiven remains one of his defining performances. His Little Bill is a masterclass in nuance, charming one moment, brutal the next, but always believable. In a film about the cost of violence and the fragility of myth, Hackman was the perfect anchor, a sheriff who builds his own house but can't shelter himself from the storm. As we remember Hackman's extraordinary career, Unforgiven stands as both a career highlight and a film that helped reshape modern cinema. It wasn't just about the death of the Old West, it was about the truth behind the legends we build, and thanks to Hackman's brilliance, that truth hit harder than ever.